morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. Okay, don't call me a crazy lady. I know a lot of you watched me because you found me with Christine Watkins. We talked a lot about the prophetic. We talked a lot about the Antichrist, which is kind of cray-cray. But I always am figuring out how can we best serve God? How can we keep our eyes open? How can we connect what's going on in the world with the eternal? And my guest today is probably someone many of you are familiar with. If you don't know his face, you do know his name. He's Eric Sammons. He is going to help us with that conversation. He is the editor of Crisis Magazine, and he's recently written another book, and it's called Moral Money. Don't hang up yet. I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with the church? Hold tight. Moral Money, a case for Bitcoin. And I was intrigued by this because he's a good Catholic and in good standing. And the premise of the book here is that we should actually consider using Bitcoin to exchange our products. And I didn't know why. But now I have an idea, and I want all of you to have an idea as well. He's actually a pretty smart guy, Eric. Forgive me for, I'm going to read this part. Besides, he holds a degree in systems analysis with a concentration in economics. So he's a smart guy from Miami University in Ohio, which always kills me because you think Miami's going to be in Florida. But he's got a master's degree in theology. And so I love when these two, that's Franciscan, by the way. And I love when these get merged together. So all jokes aside. And one last thing before I welcome my guest is I am a financial educator, 10 years as in credit unions, loan officer, taught financial classes. And if any of you feel stupid, don't, because I just said to him before we went on the air, I felt stupid, which is why I wanted to get him on, because I just want to understand Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and this is the man to help us. So, Eric Sammons, welcome to the Breakfast with Bacon show. Did I make myself sound like a moron? Because I really need you to help me look smart and sound smart, and you got to help me understand this stuff. It's a pretty intriguing concept.
It really is. And I will say Bitcoin is very humbling. Everybody feels dumb when they first get involved. I first got interested in Bitcoin in 2013. So 12 years ago, I felt very dumb. I still kind of feel dumb, but I definitely at the beginning, everybody does. It's very natural because it is a radically different form of money than we're used to. And so nothing in our education, most of our standard financial education, none of it prepares us really for Bitcoin. And so I get it. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I wanted people to understand it on a deeper level. And I knew that there's some hurdles. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and what made me a seller or a buyer, I should say, in believing that there was something ethical about it was the fact that you did have your master's in theology, and that when I started going through the chapters, I made this connection to faith and the church. And what is the church? I hadn't even realized the Catechism of the Catholic Church had anything in it about our currency and our income and labors. And so when I read that in the book, I was like, okay. So just take us from the beginning then. Is Bitcoin, is cryptocurrency moral?
Right. So, I mean, just the fact that you asked that question, there's actually a nuance between it, because there is Bitcoin, which is the first ever what's called cryptocurrency. And since then, there have been literally millions of other cryptocurrencies, kind of copycats, that have been created. I would argue very strongly Bitcoin is moral. I would not necessarily argue that all the other cryptocurrencies are moral. Some may be, but a lot of them actually are scams. A lot of them are frauds. A lot of them are get rich quick schemes. A lot of them are just failures, like they're sincere attempts, but just failures. So I would only argue, just to be very clear, that Bitcoin is moral, and the rest of them is like another discussion. But I think that the key point here is that I titled the book Moral Money for a reason, because people look at Bitcoin as lots of different things. They look at it as like some get rich quick scheme. They look at it as an investment. They look at it as maybe like a tech stock or something like that. They look at it maybe as a scam or a fraud or whatever. But ultimately, it was created as a form of money, and that's what it really is. The problem is like I really have found that most people today don't really understand money. They don't understand how money works, what it really is. I mean, everybody knows what money is on some level. I mean, you know how to use it,
Right.
but they don't really understand what money is and how it came to be. And so that's really a lot. I mean, the book, the first few chapters don't even really talk about Bitcoin. They're talking about money and what makes a money moral or immoral. Because I think that's one of the big things. Most Catholics, when they think of money, they think of it as being amoral, meaning it's just a neutral tool. It's not immoral or moral. So that's another reason why I titled the book Moral Money, to try to get them interested. But the truth is, some monetary systems, at the very least, incentivize more moral behavior than others, and some incentivize less moral behavior than others. And so that's really what I'm trying to get to when I talk about Bitcoin being a moral form of money.
And I need you to do that because I heard some other speakers, several actually, talking about how Bitcoin, for instance, would be better for Christians because you can't launder, for instance. I think I'm saying that right. It's harder to do bad things with it because it's so traceable and trackable. So can you explain that? When I heard them say that, I thought, well, maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about, I'll get a little bit more fundamental first, which is our current monetary system. And I'm just talking America, but basically every country has a similar monetary system today. In dollars, it's all 100% created by the government. It's 100% government generated. They decide how much more money will be in the money supply. If they say, hey, we need to inject more money in the money supply, they do it. There's a whole host of moral problems with that, though. And it really comes back, to me at least, I think comes back to the fact of the fall, and that we're all fallen. And the more power we have, as Edmund Burke famously said, the more we're apt to corrupt it, because that's just who we are. And so I think as Catholics, we want to avoid giving too much power to a small number of people, because we know it can have a very corrupting influence. I mean, I make this analogy. Imagine you had a machine in your house that could create real dollars, not counterfeit, but they're actually real dollars. And you're the only person who has it, and you have complete control. It's in your house. You might be the most upstanding person there is. And at first you might be like, I'm not going to use this. But then let's say your kid gets in an accident and you need money for medical bills. Well, you might go down there and you might start the money printer up and print a few dollars. Well, over time, most of us, and I know I speak for myself, and I think for most people, pretty soon you're paying for vacations with it. And you just have, because why not? You have the ability to just create more money. You're going to do it. Well, the government's the same way. Maybe there's an unpopular war they want to fund that the people would not want their taxes raised for. Maybe it's a social program that could buy some votes for them. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why a government might be like, maybe the government, they made a terrible decisions in the past, and they've spent more money than they have, and they need to just print some more to make up for it. And this is exactly what's happened. And so that leads to these immoral things. And this has consequences, because this printing of new money impacts us, you and me, who aren't in government. It impacts us because it devalues the value of our money. So if I just save my money in a savings account, I put $1,000 in there, in 5 years, I can only buy maybe $800, $600 worth of goods that I could have gotten, $1,000 worth now. And so my money goes down in value because they keep printing more and more money. So Bitcoin, you can't do that. You can't print more money. It's got a fixed schedule of how new Bitcoins are generated, and it's set, and there's only going to be 21 million ever created. But the other thing about Bitcoin, this gets to specifically to your question, is it's all on what's called the blockchain. People probably heard of that, but that's basically just a public ledger. In other words, it's a ledger of every single transaction that's ever been made in Bitcoin in its history since 2009 is publicly available. And so you can see every single one of them. Now, it's not 100% clear always exactly who did what, because it just lists the Bitcoin addresses, which are just a string of numbers and letters. And so you might see somebody sent 10 Bitcoin on this date to this address. You wouldn't necessarily at first know, okay, well, who was that? The truth is, though, through a lot of analysis and different tools, usually you can trace it back to the person. Because, for example, if I want to get Bitcoin, I have to buy it at what's called an exchange. When I buy it from that, I have to give them information about myself, my name, my social security number, same thing I would give to a bank account. I have to give to them. So eventually it could trace back to me. Now, there are ways you can get around it. I mean, criminals are criminals. They can find ways, just like with cash. You can use cash to buy drugs, and it might not be as traceable. But definitely it is something where you can launder money a lot more easily using cash, using dollars than you can through Bitcoin. It's not made to basically allow people. I mean, like I said, criminals can use it because it's a form of money. I mean, the best forms of money can be used by everybody, including criminals, but it definitely is less apt for that type of activity than the US dollar would be, for example.
I have a couple questions. So when I'm, let me go with an easy question. People have to use Bitcoin to buy stuff by people who also use Bitcoin. So if we get into it today, what percentage of people's average daily purchases, food, groceries, gas, things, would be able to be used by Bitcoin? And if not, is it mostly just a tool for saving and investing at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question because Bitcoin is 16 years old. In the history of money, that's like a newborn baby, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you think about gold is like 6,000 years old, it's being used as money or something like that. And Bitcoin's 16 years. And in its life cycle, really, it's still in what I would call there's three different uses for money. There's store of value. You have money and it keeps value for you over time. The dollar's not very good at that. Gold's very good at that. A medium exchange. That's what most people think of. It's like, okay, I want to
Yeah.
buy your goods. I'm going to give you some of this money. Exchange, medium exchange. Unit of account is the third, and that's like how things are priced in. So, for example, when you go to Amazon, the unit of account is dollars. It just costs
Mm-hmm.
$9.99 or something like that. Right now, and that's kind of the order most monies go in. People have to value it first, say it's worth something before they're going to exchange it. And if enough people exchange it, eventually things start to get priced in that monetary system. And so right now, we're still in the store of value phase, meaning that typically people are just holding it in order because it keeps its value against the dollar very well. And they've realized that over the 16 years, like, hey, this holds value for me. Because like a lot of people, and I do want to distinguish it between investment, because an investment is, okay, I put money into, let's say, a tech company, I buy its stock, and my hope is the tech company will be successful. And so the value of the stock will increase. Maybe I'll get dividends at some point, and so I'll get money through that way. And so I'm trying to grow my money. With Bitcoin, because it is just a form of money, it's much more like the old school store of value like gold was back in the day. I mean, I remember reading where 1 ounce of gold could buy you a nice toga in Roman times and can buy you a nice suit today. It's literally kept its value through thousands of years. And so I know people would say gold's investment. I'm not saying it's not, but think of gold as more as savings in that you're just trying to keep your value. Bitcoin's the same attitude in my mind. Is that's what it's made for, is to keep that value. Now, as a medium of exchange, there are places you can use Bitcoin. I mentioned you before we got on that on my website. You can buy my books using Bitcoin. Steak and Shake just about 2 months ago started allowing for you can buy with Bitcoin at their stores. Jeff Bezos, that space flight thing he does, where you
Mm-hmm.
can buy a trip to space, you can now pay with Bitcoin. They just announced that last week. So there are places. It's very small right now. Very few places can you actually use Bitcoin as a medium exchange because most people just don't have it. They don't know how to accept it. Things like that. But that's growing. Like I said, I've been around for 12 years. And when I first started, I mean, it was like nobody. And now it's a very small number, but it's growing. But really, I would say it's still in that store of value where people are discovering, okay, this is something I can hold and will keep value. And then over time, more people saying, oh, I will accept this. Like that's what I did. I was like, okay, I think this is valuable. I will accept it now for goods that I sell. If you want to buy one of my books, you can buy it using Bitcoin. So that's the evolution it's kind of going through still.
So if I'm 60 years old and I want to retire in 5 years and I'm putting my money in Bitcoin and then I hit the old button, right? I'm done. Do I, let's just say two questions. At this point in history, in order to use that, right, as an investment, then have to change it back out into dollars and buy the things that I need to eat and drink or is there a capacity to do that right now so I can leave it in Bitcoin as my retirement savings or perhaps in 5 years, then will it be something that's depositing regularly into my account and I can, so where are we
Yeah.
today? And am I seeing it the right way? And where
Yeah.
are we? And then we're going to get onto the morality part too,
Right.
because I know we've got a big Catholic audience here.
You're right, right. I think right now I would say probably in 10 years, it would not surprise me if a lot of places you could just use Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. That because in the growth I've seen over the last 12 years myself, I think projecting it's really been taking off in the last couple years. I think you'll get more and more. Right now, though, if you want most things, if you wanted to buy them, you had some Bitcoin, you wanted to buy something, you basically have to sell it for dollars and then use the dollars to pay. And there is a problem with that in that it's a capital gains, because right now it's treated as a commodity under tax code in the United States. In most countries, this is the case. So you'd have to pay capital gains on any increase. So if you bought, let's say, $1,000 worth of Bitcoin today, and then in a year, let's say it's worth $1,200 worth, and you sold some of that $200 gain, you would have to pay tax on. So there are disadvantages there. Now, the truth is Bitcoin's value has gone up so much that it more than offsets any capital gains losses you might have. But I do think also, though, over time, I think and in fact, the United States government is looking at trying to lift some of those capital gains on Bitcoin transactions. I know there's one bill, I think right now in the House or something like that, where it's like if it's under $600, there is no capital gain. So if you just bought something worth $100 in Bitcoin, you wouldn't have that capital gain. So those things are moving forward. I see that also happening before too long. And but I think within 5 to 10 years, I do think you would have more items you could buy directly with Bitcoin. You wouldn't have to go through the process of selling it and things like that. In fact, Square, which is a major payment processor, they are right now rolling out the ability to accept Bitcoin to their customers. And the way they're doing it is, even if you don't care about Bitcoin yourself, you can accept Bitcoin. And what will happen is Square will just automatically convert the dollars to your bank account. So I could have a store. Maybe I want nothing to do with Bitcoin, but I'm like, yeah, but if somebody wants to pay me with that, I don't care. Well, then it would automatically convert to dollars. I think that's going to be the next step, is where more and more shops will accept Bitcoin, and they might not even hold the Bitcoin themselves. They might just get it as dollars, but you can spend Bitcoin with them anyway.
That is very helpful. I'm going to kind of give what I think is my own question and answer my own question, but I want you to clarify for me then. So we have, gosh, I hate when they go right out of my head like that. It was beautifully framed in my head. Now it's coming out.
That happens to me a lot.
Right? Oh my goodness. I watched what happened in Canada with the truckers, and then when the government didn't like them, they shut down their bank accounts. They didn't have access to it. So I think the biggest fear many people have is this idea of numbers on a screen versus physical, tangible dollars in my pocket. So, you could freeze those dollars. Now, my answer to that is, yeah, but they could freeze what's in your bank account too. But then the person would say back to me, that's why I don't want to keep most of it in my bank. I want to hold it tangibly. Is that just a normal fear? Is it, yeah, that's the way it is. It can be frozen either way, no matter what you have. Is there any protection having one system versus the other? Or am I?
Yeah, that actually is one of the biggest selling points for Bitcoin. It's actually, a lot of people call it
help me
freedom
understand.
money.
That's
Yeah,
what a
it's
lot of
actually
people
called
like.
freedom money. And it's one of the main reasons I first got into Bitcoin, was exactly that scenario. In fact, when the Canadian truckers protests happened, I sent them Bitcoin. They set up a Bitcoin address and they got that, and nobody could take it from them. That's what's beautiful about Bitcoin. So let me take a step back and explain why it is. So people need to understand it sounds like some of your audience probably would understand this, but people don't understand that your money at the bank isn't actually your money. They can take
it isn't even in the bank either.
Well, thank you. Yes, exactly. There's two problems with money in the bank. One, it's not actually there, and second, it's not yours. Other than that, it's great. But no, but really, that's fun. Some people think that when they deposit, and you're kind of taught this or assume this when you're a kid. You put $1,000 in the bank. You think there's literally $1,000 in cash or something sitting in the bank that's kind of designated yours. Well, number one, no. They don't keep $1,000 in the bank for you. They keep maybe 100, maybe less. And then the rest of it, they loan out, they invest it, whatever. And so their hope is that not everybody will come and say, I want all my money.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then they're in trouble. That's a bank run. And so that's the first thing. But secondly, is that because of many regulations by the government, The government has the ability to tell a bank, oh, you need to freeze the money of that person. You might even want to seize it. And when I say government, I don't necessarily always just mean the United States government. I was the Canadian government. But like there was an example in Cyprus, the island of Cyprus in 2013, I believe, maybe 2012, one of those 2 years. This is right when I started getting into Bitcoin. That's why I remember it. Might have been 14. But anyway, they were having serious problems. Their government had spent way too much money. They were running out, they had serious economic problems. And so what they decided was they called it a haircut. They took, I think it was 10% of all the funds in the bank of somebody who had over 100,000, I think it was 100,000 euro. So if you had 200,000 euro, they took 10% of that 100,000 extra you had in there. They just took it. And they said, okay, this is ours now. This is the government's now ours.
So it
And that
wasn't
kind
to
of tells you,
borrow it, they took it to keep it.
they just took it. They didn't borrow it. They just took it. And like you already mentioned, the Canadian trucker protests, they just seized those funds because they didn't agree with the group politically. And so this happens. And so money in the bank is not really owned by you. And so because of that, some people smartly keep some money outside of the bank, like, for example, maybe in precious metals, gold or silver or cash or something like that. And I think it's always a good idea to do that, by the way, to have some for emergencies,
Diversified.
particularly. Yeah. And for diversification, like you
We're getting
mentioned.
more and more people, Eric, putting them in coffee cans and mattresses again, too, you know?
Yes. And the problem though with that though is of course it
Loss.
goes down in value.
Yeah.
It goes down in value. And of course it's hard to secure at times, but your $1,000 today is going to only purchase you maybe $800 in a year or two because of inflation. And that's because of the way our government system works, our government money works. Well, Bitcoin, yes, you buy it online, you can have an account with somebody like a bank that you hold your Bitcoin with them, stuff like that. That in a sense is very similar to your bank account. They can seize that. The beauty of Bitcoin is you can hold it like cash. You can actually, what I mean by that is you can actually have a device at your house that controls your Bitcoin and nobody can touch it. And it's completely secure and nobody can seize it. And if I want to send that money to that Bitcoin to you on your device, I can do that completely freely and nobody can stop me. So when I sent that Bitcoin to the Canadian trucker protesters to support them, I sent it from my wallet to their wallet, and there was literally no way for a government or bank to stop us. And there was no way for a government or bank to seize the money. They got that Bitcoin, and that was theirs, and it couldn't be taken from them. Now, there's still the issue if they end up wanting to spend it. Right now, they still have to convert it to Canadian dollars. They have to find a way to do that and not get that seized. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution yet,
Correct.
but
But if
it's
there was a
far
gas
more secure.
station that received Bitcoin,
They
at
could
least
just
it could
use,
have
yep.
gone to that gas station.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And so Bitcoin really is freedom money in that it protects us from big brother, from government problems. Now, a lot of times Americans, that doesn't really resonate with them. And maybe not your audience, but like your typical American just thinks everything's hunky dory, government's great, they're going to always take care of us, stuff like that. But if you look at the history, first of all, of the of the world, I mean, all over, but also around the country, around the world today, there are many governments that, they do these things. I mean, I actually mentioned Canada and Cyprus, but imagine, for example, you're a missionary in North Korea or in Saudi Arabia or something like that. You need ways that you can send funds that are outside the prying eyes of government. There's legitimate reasons. I mean, our government, we tend to think, okay, it's going to be basically give us freedom as Catholics and things like that. Not always, we've seen, but like other governments are not so friendly. So Bitcoin really can be a means for them. And there have been cases of people like missionaries in like North Korea. I know of this, where people were able to hold their funds because of Bitcoin. I know of a story of a woman who was in Afghanistan, and she escaped, and basically she had some Bitcoin. She was selling some things with Bitcoin. Her uncle was like controlling her completely, as a Muslim situation, controlling her completely and her funds. And so she started to accept Bitcoin like on the side. And when she escaped, it was a terrible situation she was in. She escaped Afghanistan. I think she went to Germany. I can't remember where, but she was able to take her Bitcoin with her, and no government could confiscate when she crossed borders. Her uncle didn't even know she had it. And so she was able to escape that situation and be free. And so when she arrived, she wasn't in a situation where she was completely destitute, had no funds. She was able to access her Bitcoin. And so these are just examples already. And so it really is a great tool against totalitarian, authoritarian governments, religions, and whatever the case may be.
Those are my people.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
audience.
Okay.
Yeah, that is my audience because, the Bible says there will be an Antichrist. It will come. And I've said all the time, looking at the nature, the trajectory of the Christian faith from when it was born with Christ and it started growing, we were pre-Christian, then Christian, and then we became post-Christian. And now we literally are becoming anti-Christians. So the Antichrist will be making his appearance at some point. Only God knows
Right.
when. But it does seem like it could very well happen in my lifetime. And these are the kind of questions. Now, I know Satan's going to try to do his thing and get his hands on Bitcoin and stuff, but we keep thinking about this. We do need to be prepared for buying and selling. And if we
Right.
can't do so, um, make for me, put aside any questions I've asked because maybe I'm not seeing what I don't see, but then make for me this connection to the morality then and how we can continue. Can we use it to buy and sell and exchange or?
Right. Okay. So there's various ways in which I would say Bitcoin is moral. I want to first just address kind of what you just mentioned about
Okay.
a government that would be. I mean, we don't know when the Antichrist is coming, but we do know there are things in place that could help an Antichrist come to power these days that weren't in
Yes.
place in the past. And I've heard good, sincere Catholics come to me and say, "Well, isn't Bitcoin like perfect for a mark of the beast and selling and trading and things like that?" And that's because they don't really understand how Bitcoin works. Here's the reality. There's Bitcoin, and then there's what's called central bank digital currencies, CBDCs.
Mhm.
Those are like the evil twin of Bitcoin. They take the technology, some of the technology, not all of it, but some of the technology of Bitcoin, and they use it for evil. So Bitcoin is 100% decentralized, meaning there is nobody in control of it. The way it runs is there are literally tens of thousands of Bitcoin nodes, which are basically computers running Bitcoin software. I have one in my house because it's free to run. And they're running all over the world. And they're what are making sure the exchanges happen and everything like that. If let's say tomorrow the United States government said we're going to make Bitcoin illegal, we're going to shut down the network. They could try, but they're going to fail because the rest of the world is going to keep on running their nodes. And so Bitcoin just keeps on going. In fact, China has tried multiple times to ban Bitcoin and has always failed. They've always given up. They've tried. Russia briefly tried for a while and they've realized, okay, that wasn't going to work. Various governments have tried this and they always fail because it just runs all over the place. I mean, and anybody can run it. So there's nobody in control. There's nobody you can go after. They can't say, okay, we're going to get the CEO of Bitcoin Corporation and take him down. There is no such thing. And so they can't shut down. A CBDC, what it does is it takes some of the blockchain technology of Bitcoin, but it puts it under the control of a central bank, a
Right.
central organization, so that they can control it completely. In fact, it's very scary what a CBDC can do because what could happen is I've heard these are the examples I'm going to give are actual examples given by the proponents of CBDCs, not me fear mongering or conspiracy theory. One example is, governments like people spending money. They like them to be consumerist and because they think that boosts their economy. They could say, okay, you get a $2,000 paycheck. You have 6 months to spend that. If you don't spend it within 6 months, we're taking the rest of it away because we have total control of the currency now. It's all digital. We can control it completely. Or they could say, I don't think it's a good idea for you to be buying something at the gun shop. So we're just going to make that when you try to buy something at the gun shop, that transaction is going to fail because we can control it completely. They would be able to track every single purchase you make, and they can control your money. I mean, like we already know, like I said, the money at the bank isn't really your bank, but there's still some freedom there. Whereas a CBDC, they can dig down to every single dime you have and they can control it completely. That is something that I think a Antichrist type government, Antichrist type person would
Yeah.
use to great effect. But Bitcoin is literally the solution against it because the fact it has no control, nobody controlling it. It can be done freely between two people without anybody, saying, okay, we're going to stop this or anything like that. So that's one way I would say Bitcoin is more moral
Yeah.
than even government money. Another way, though, is because the way our current government money works is it's called fiat currency. It's the government just creates it out of thin air. What that does, it has a lot of consequences. I already mentioned it has consequences in that it is a great temptation to governments to do immoral things to basically help themselves. But also, one of the other things it does is it really fosters a consumer spending mentality. If I give you $1,000 today and I say in a year it's going to be worth $500, you're going to be able. What are you going to be incentivized to do? You're going to spend it
Spend
now,
it.
right? Yeah, you want to spend it exactly. If I tell you, however, I give you $1,000 now, and in a year it's going to be worth $2,000,
You're going to want
you're
to
more
save it.
likely to save it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you're still going to buy the things you need. You're still going to buy your food, your clothing, your house, and all that stuff. You might even still take a vacation. You're not going to like stop spending money, but you're not going to be a consumerist. You're not going to be just the excessive consumerism that we see rampant around the world, around our country today. That I think that's a Catholic issue. We're called to temperance. We're called to be, to manage our money, be good stewards of our money, not be spending like there's no tomorrow on the latest junk that just got shipped from China. But our fiat system really incentivizes us to spend now. And the other thing it does is by our money devaluing, there's something called the Cantillon effect, where when new money is printed, it benefits the people closest to the money production, the government, the banks, the military industrial complex. They're the ones who get the money first. And then it goes out into the economy, and then prices start rising after that. So they're able to buy things at the old prices, but they spend all this new money, and now it starts going out to everybody else. What happens is people on the streets, they're actually made poorer by this fact because they didn't get the new money, and wages always trail the prices and things like that. So what happens is what I'm seeing. I have some adult children now. They're in their 20s. They're getting married, having kids, getting started, and I'm comparing them buying a house for the first time to me when I did it in the 1990s, and also compared to my parents when they did it in the 1960s. So these 30-year time frames. When my parents, my dad, he had a job that I think he bought his house, the house I grew up in. I want to say it was for like $10,000,
My
$20,000, something
dad
like that.
paid $7,000 for
Right,
our house, 4 bedrooms.
right. And then the first house I bought was like 150, 200,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And now though, some of my kids are trying to buy houses. They're looking at like, and we're not talking about extravagant houses, but just in some places, like you have to pay 250, 300 just for a modest house. They're not
I
trying to
know.
like, live in a mansion. And but then I look at our salaries, compare my dad's starting off to mine, starting off to their starting off, and it's not comparable. Like we made more in purchasing power. My dad made more than me. I make more than my son does. And so what happens is like this makes it more difficult. And so this, I think, here's where Catholics really this should really think about. When you have a struggle, when you get started to make ends meet, certain things you're gonna be tempted to certain things. Number one, you're gonna be tempted, even if you believe you want the wife to stay at home, take care of the kids. You're like, no, we just can't afford that. It's simply, we're not trying to live extravagantly. We just simply cannot make that work because of how expensive everything is. And secondly, you're more prone to wait to have children. And so that can be a temptation to artificial contraception for a lot of people. I mean,
Right.
obviously, if we're faithful Catholics, we're not going to do that. But we all know people struggle with different things. And so now all of a sudden we have an economy that is pushing people to spend all this money and not be able to afford things. Prices keep going up. And so you have more. Now, I'm not saying the only reason we have so many two-income families is just because of this,
Correct. But
but
this is just a basic
yes,
thread of,
it sets a foundation. And I'm not saying that's why everybody uses artificial contraception either, but I am saying that it tends to make people do this. In fact, I remember listening to a Bitcoin podcast recently, and they were Christians. They were not Catholics. And I could tell, they're not like anti-artificial contraception and like that. But the family, the host is talking about her friend having another child because they were using Bitcoin. They were like saving in Bitcoin. They felt more confident about the future and to have more children. And I was like, this is such a beautiful thing. Like, yes, we know we should be open to life God gives us, but these weren't Catholics. They're mostly living like the world lives, but they had decided to save in Bitcoin. They felt more financially secure, and they were willing to have more kids. So there's literally kids in the world today who wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Bitcoin, or might have been aborted or something. So that's why I really strongly believe Bitcoin is a more moral form of money than our government system, because it not only at the top end with the it makes government officials be more immoral. But on the bottom end, people like us, it incentivizes us to more moral behavior.
You said that Bitcoin is purchased in not coins. What did you call it? What unit are they?
In Bitcoin, the units there are two different units. There's just Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin is actually the name of the unit as well. It's a little confusing, to be honest, because, but anyway, the unit is Bitcoin. But there's also something called Satoshis, and that's after the founder of Bitcoin, which is Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudonym, but they call it Satoshis, or you can say Sats, and that's the lowest. And here, the lowest unit. Now, here's something different about Bitcoin than dollars. Dollars only goes to the 100th place, 2 decimal points, and that's cents. You can't have, lower than that, smaller than that.
Right. You can't have
In
less than
Bitcoin, you can
56
actually,
cents or 1
yeah,
cent.
in Bitcoin, you can actually go to 8 decimal points. So you can go, so one Bitcoin right now, I think it's like $115,000. So people think I can't get into Bitcoin. I don't have $115,000. No, you can go all the way down 8 decimal points. So you can buy, for example, $5 worth of Bitcoin, and that's not a problem. And so it goes to under, in fact, the one Satoshi, in fact, it takes I think it's like 800 or 900 Satoshis make up $1 right now. And so it can go a very small unit of measure.
So if this is the only thing that really got me. If there's no CEO, who's running it, and how do that my brain still, and I joked with you before we went on the air, I have a PhD. I know I'm smart. But what if things go wrong? Who's managing it? Nothing goes on without a team of people or decision makers, right?
Well, actually, they do. It's called the internet. Think about email. Who is the CEO of email? I'm not saying Gmail or Hotmail. Who's the CEO of email itself? Nobody. Email is what is basically just a software protocol. That's a fancy word. It's a software program that runs on the internet and basically sets the rules for how things run. And so there's what's called an email protocol and servers around the world run this email protocol. And what happens is when Gmail, let's say I use Gmail, you use Hotmail, and I want to send you an email from my Gmail account to your Hotmail account. We don't even think about this. This just happens naturally to us. And we're just like, okay, that just happens. What's actually happening is Gmail is following the rules of the email protocol that was written literally, tens of, decades ago, a couple decades ago. And it follows those rules to know, okay, I'm sending something to a Hotmail address. I need to find, using the rules of the protocol, I need to find where the Hotmail server is. Once I find that, then I need to tell it, okay, send it to this account on the Hotmail server. And then when you check your email, you go to that server, your program on your computer goes to that server, and it pulls that email out. But the point is that Google's not running email. Microsoft's not running email. It's a protocol that was developed years ago, and it just is something that everybody now uses. The internet's the same way. When you go to a website, it's a protocol that determines how you actually get there. When you type, every website actually is a set of numbers, but we don't have to remember those because we have nice names for them. But what's happening underneath is you type in, for example, crisismagazine.com. I'll put in a plug for my own here. You put in crisismagazine.com. What's happening is your computer is going to servers that are connected to the internet and saying, okay, translate this into the numbers that where this website's hosted, and then go find that server on the internet and then get the information that they asked for and then bring it back to them. Bitcoin works the exact same way. It's a protocol. And like I said, these Bitcoin nodes, they run the software, the rules, the protocol software that says, okay, I want to send you, let's say 100 Satoshis. Well, I get my wallet. I say, okay, send 100 Satoshis to you. And then it does the same thing. My Bitcoin software on my wallet then connects to the Bitcoin protocol. It's running on the internet. It says, okay, how do I get to the right place? It's a little bit different technically, but the point is the underlying concept.
You're speaking blonde, I understand.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And so then it deposited into your wallet. Now, it is true just like with email, there are organizations and groups that kind of maintain the different software programs. So for example, Google maintains Gmail. Microsoft maintains Hotmail that connect to that, use that protocol. And the same thing is true with Bitcoin. There are different organizations that run Bitcoin wallets that connect to the protocol. But let's say Google literally ceased to exist tomorrow. Email would still work. Your Gmail account wouldn't work, but Hotmail would work, Yahoo would work, all the different email accounts would still work. The ones that don't use Gmail, don't use Google, because email protocol is still running. So if one wallet all of a sudden goes under for whatever reason, you just hook it up to a new wallet. You just say, okay, I'll just use a different wallet for my Bitcoin, just like you would use a different email provider than Gmail if all of a sudden Google went under. So that's how it runs with nobody actually running it. It's the beauty of the internet. That's how the internet runs. There is no CEO of the internet. Al Gore didn't create it, and it didn't. He doesn't run it. And
What?
so I know, hard to believe, isn't
Wow,
it?
shocked.
That's a reference maybe younger listeners might not
I
get anymore.
know.
I knew
Sorry.
you would get it.
Sorry,
And
millennials.
that's our time, so we understand it. So that's basically how it runs without having a CEO or somebody in charge of it.
This was not even on my any thought structure for me. I was like, cryptocurrency, whatever, done. I would have never thought about it until Sophia sent me this. And well, actually, they asked me, and I asked them if I could get a copy because I'm like, this what? Bitcoin moral? What? There's a Catholic that's really fighting and explaining it. And this is really a conversation that has opened my eyes, because now I'm thinking, I know my husband watches my shows now. He told me, love you, honey. So I'm actually thinking perhaps this is something we should look into. And I love the explanation that they're not all the same. That Bitcoin is the one that's run. I can't even say that it's not run, right? That I'm still having a hard time with, what if something breaks? I'm still thinking mechanical. Who fixes the brakes? Who makes sure that someone doesn't go in and change the protocols so that someone's making money?
Well, that's the beautiful thing is just like email, Bitcoin protocol is open source, meaning everybody in the world can look at it if they want to. If you want to look at the code for Bitcoin, you can look at it. I actually wrote a book on Bitcoin back in 2015, a very short book, and actually the cover had the code, some of the code of Bitcoin actually as the cover. And that's a beautiful thing. So if somebody tried to go in and monkey it and say, okay, I'm going to change the code so that instead of, it will send, let's say, 1% to me all the time, every transaction. Well, what happens is those 20,000 plus nodes that are running all over the internet, running the Bitcoin nodes, they see that and they say, no, I'm not upgrading that software. Because what happens is they'd have to upgrade. They say, okay, run this software now for the Bitcoin protocol. We're going to upgrade it. And everybody's like, no, because they can see it. There's no secrets in Bitcoin. Okay, this person tried to extract something. He tried to hack it or whatever the case may be. And they all say, we're not going to upgrade to that. And so you're on your own, buddy. Do whatever you want. But Bitcoins just keep going on without you. And so that's how it kind of keeps from breaking, so to speak. And in fact, in the 16-year history, Bitcoin is, because it's worth so much now, it's like literally all the Bitcoin combined in the world is over $2 trillion. It has been attempted to get into this over and over and over again. People have tried to hack it. People have tried to, finagle it, try to figure out ways, and they all have failed. And it's worth a lot to try to, and they haven't been able to. In fact, there's one instance in Bitcoin's history. This is about a year in when almost nobody used it, where there was a problem with the latest upgrade to the code. And they realized it very quickly, the people who kind of were into Bitcoin. And here's kind of a little bit of the magic of Bitcoin is everybody realized we need to fix this immediately, because if there's a true problem here, it's going to devalue what we own. And so that's there's not only software protections being open source, there's incentives. People know because here's the funny thing is, let's say somebody, I don't think this can happen, but let's just say somebody was able to figure out some hack and they were able to steal a bunch of Bitcoin. Guess what? What they just stole now worthless, because everybody realized, well, it's hackable. It's forget it. We're out of Bitcoin now. So like there's even incentive, like people don't even want to do that. But the truth is people still have tried to do it behind the scenes, and it just keeps going strong. And without one person saying, okay, we have to fix this problem, people just recognize the biggest reason, like I said, is because of the decentralized nature, how the network runs. If somebody tried to introduce some type of hack into the code, or they even made an error in the code, and it tries to promulgate it, the people will, so many people see it first that they're like, I'm just not upgrading. Because what happens usually is when the latest version of the protocol comes out, because people maintain it and what have you, different teams, the 20,000 nodes, most people don't upgrade. Like I don't upgrade immediately. What they do is they let a small percentage upgrade and they see what happens. Is theirs working okay? Is there any problems? If there is, okay, now we'll upgrade. They might wait 6 months, they might wait a year. There are people still running the protocol software from 10 years ago because it always is backwards compatible. You can still keep running it. You might just not get some of the latest features. So that's the beauty of it, is how robust and how anti-fragile it is. That's kind of the technical term for it. It's anti-fragile. It's very difficult to break apart.
Yeah, that's kind of the same as everything else in society. You know, my husband and I are late adapters. We always wait for people to fix it. And then I have a friend, she's like getting all the newest of everything right
Right.
away. And so what a beautiful system it is. It really has helped to see how God, it's kind of like the checks and balances that God allows
Right.
to 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 help us to thrive as best as we can without, I mean, everything, Satan's got his hands on everything somehow. So we still have to be alert. We
Absolutely.
still have to um, do our part, I would suppose. So again, I keep thinking it's my last question, but this then, Bitcoin is not something you're using yet for the most part to spend. Like I want to buy your book. So most people aren't using Bitcoin to buy stuff yet. They're using it just as
That's
their
right.
investment portfolios.
Yes, as part of their savings. And I would, and just obviously it's not financial advice, that whole disclaimer thing. But I would just say Bitcoin is still, because it's so young, it's still volatile at times, although I've seen the volatility go down. And what that just means, for people who might not understand what I'm saying, is the price in dollars goes up and down a lot. And so I would always argue that it's a savings vehicle in the long term. So let's say 4 to 5 years. If you, let's say you have a project, like we're planning at the end of this year, we're going to do a home remodeling project, and we're on a guy's list. And so I have some money set aside for that, for when he comes in probably October, November, to get the work done, get the work started. Well, I'm not putting that into Bitcoin, because I know between today and
It could be up,
August
it could
and
be down,
November,
like a stock
it could be worth
exchange.
less. I'm just holding that in the bank, making, just holding it because it's a short term.
Mhm.
But for money for value that I want to have in 5 years, 10 years, that's what
It's
I'm
like
putting into
inflation,
Bitcoin.
long-term money,
That's right.
right?
Exactly. So that's the other thing I would just make sure I note, is like, because like you said, it's not used very much for buying and selling right now. Although like I said, I've seen it increase, but it's still very small amount of places that you can actually spin Bitcoin.
You've helped me not feel stupid.
Yay.
I I was preparing for this interview going, I don't want to sound like a moron. This
No,
is
you
going to
did
be
not.
really
You
hard.
had very good questions. Yeah, they're
Well,
very
and your
good. They
answers
get to
were
the heart of
great
it.
because I will tell you, I'm going to credit you. I would have never considered Bitcoin in my life, and now it's in my brain, and I'm going, well, maybe we should, so
There we
that's
go.
very helpful. And I think a lot of the viewers might be thinking the same thing again, because my people are the ones that are preparing. A lot of preppers watch the
Yeah.
site. What do we do? And this sounds like one of the first levels of things that when money is stopped, that, okay,
Yeah.
at least we have Bitcoin
Yeah.
until, I'm sure Satan's going to get his hands somehow one day on everything because it's what he's
I mean,
supposed
it's
to.
funny because in the prepping community, which I've been involved in as well, people either love or hate Bitcoin. And I found that most people hate it don't fully understand it. Like, I will be the first to say, if you had a true grid down situation, I'm talking a massive like
Yeah.
long-term widespread grid down, Bitcoin is not going to help you. And I'll be the first to say that, but the truth is, if you have that true
Neither
scenario,
is your regular money in the bank.
that's right. You got a
The
lot
only
of
thing
problems.
that's going to help you might be the dollars in your pocket, and those are going to go quick because that loaf of
That's right.
bread that was $5
I
is
mean,
now
most of
$52.
us, I mean, let's be blunt. Most of us are dead in that situation,
Yeah,
because a society would break down so quickly without the internet, without all this.
all of
So
it.
yeah, so Bitcoin's the least of your problems at that point. But and I think that, though, personally, in all the prepping scenarios I've envisioned, that's just one out of, it's not a real likely scenario in my mind. There's a lot of other scenarios I picture of totalitarian governments, where they're
Which
actually
will come
technology.
first.
Right,
Yes,
which is technology will still, they want the technology to be running.
because
They
they need
want the
it to
internet to be running
control
because they
us.
will use it. Bitcoin's a way to take the tool that they're going to abuse and use it around them. And that's why I think Bitcoin is very much a freedom money that can be used in those scenarios. Like I said, wouldn't help in a complete grid down situation, but all those other, like, many scenarios that could happen one day, it's a great tool.
I know you only have 10 fingers and 10 toes, but how many books have you written?
9, I think.
Nine. Okay, you
Yes,
got one finger left, Eric.
the problem is I have 2 in the works right now.
Oh,
So I
geez,
have
what are you
one
gonna
coming.
do?
I have a novel coming out in a couple months, and then I have a book I'm writing on artificial intelligence that'll come out next year. So yeah,
I don't
so
know how
I'm
you get
about to
time to
break the
do that.
10, and I'll have to get out my toes then at
Get
that
your
point.
toes out. I struggle just getting my second one out. I'm just like, I'm always busy with the grandchildren and the podcast and the things. So
Oh
God
yeah,
bless
yeah.
you. So I know they can get this book at Sophia Institute. So thank you, Sophia, for sending me great guests. And I would always suggest, I say this all the time, you can always go to Sophia first. If it's really such an issue that you have to go to Amazon or the other places, then do so. But as Eric Sammons said, you can purchase a book using Bitcoin if you're one of those people as well. But you can get all of your books at ericsammons.com. I'm guessing they're not all published at Sophia Institute.
Yeah, I have a number published with Sophia, Catholic Answers, Our Sunday Visitor, various places, and but all my books that are available, you can buy at my website ericsammons.com, and you can buy with Bitcoin if you want to. But also, I fully support buying from the publisher directly. As an author, I always say buy from the author directly. She your first choice. If that doesn't work out, buy from the publisher directly. If that doesn't work out, then yes, you can also buy from
Those
the
other
site that shall
places.
not be named.
Yeah, the site that should not be named. So crisismagazine.com, you are the editor
Yes,
there. So you have lots and lots and lots of articles. I know you edit, but you also write articles because
yes,
I've
that's
seen
right.
your name there. So, make sure, well, for many of you are probably already reading Crisis Magazine. So we will have a link to all three of those, sophiainstitute.com, ericsammons.com, and then of course also crisismagazine.com in the show notes. Please support all of these Catholic organizations, Catholic people. That's one of the best ways to promote morality in the world, is to stick with the places that you know that are, though imperfect, are trying to promote God's truth. And also follow them on all their social media channels. Follow me on all my social media places. I always try to say them, but I always miss a couple. Go like and subscribe. My website's breakfastwithbacon.com, and follow me on all the places, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I don't even remember. Oh, TikTok, that's a new one. And the things. Do you have any social media channels that they should
Yeah,
follow you on?
Crisis is on all the major ones as well. I'm mostly active on X now, formerly Twitter. That's where I mostly yeah. So that's where my social media presence is, mostly on X. Although I kind of go in and out of it, but I'm pretty active there.
Two questions. They're not questions, they're fill in the blank. Number one, when I die, I will know my life has been a success if.
Jesus says, "Welcome, good and faithful servant."
Number two, name one thing you'd have our listeners do differently as a result of something they heard today.
I think they should buy a little Bitcoin. Just don't have to get a whole bunch. Just buy Bitcoin for the first time. Just learn what it's about. Spend, $100 or $50 or $10 or whatever, where your financial situation is, and buy a little bit and just hold it. Don't even do anything with it. Just hold it and just kind of wait and see, and then kind of get more comfortable with it. And then you can decide after that, okay, this is something for me or it's not something for me.
And Jesus would have no more problem with Bitcoin than he would with normal dollars or shillings or whatever
Yeah,
else.
I think he prefers Bitcoin over dollars, to be
I think
honest.
because they're not launderable,
Yeah, right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, God bless you, Eric. This has been great. There's not a lot of shows that I learn a lot. I mean, a lot that really touch my heart, but this one has really helped me learn and have more peace about this thing. I taught public speaking at the university here for 11 years, and among other classes. And I had a kid come in and do a speech on Bitcoin about 10 years ago. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Had no clue. But now I always remembered that kid. I was like,
There you
but
go.
now here it is. We've come full circle. So, all right. All of you, thank you always for watching my show. As I just said, remember to always like, subscribe, and share. And please comment. And if you have any questions that I can't answer because it's about Bitcoin, I'll make sure that Eric Sammons gets it and we'll get to the answer. But that's about it. Okay. See how smart he is. He's a smart guy. Let's see if he remembers this.
Oh, I've been the past 2 minutes, I've been trying to remember it.
You got it. You got it. He's got it. Let's see what he can do. I'm
Oh.
Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon, and I'd like to remind you always to live your life
Oh, I forgot.
sunny side.
Sunny side up. I knew
Yes.
some breakfast. I knew something breakfast related. Sunny side up.